We're going to finish with lesson 2. Going to kind of just quickly review what we did last class. Not going to take quite as long and finish it. And I'm also going to just briefly explore the neural filters that are in part of our filters that we have in Photoshop. So the neural filters are going to go kind of hand in hand with the next project. And I'm going to briefly introduce the next project, which is going to be a photo restoration project. So this is the one where I put it up just so you can kind of read it, where you're going to look for a photograph from your grandparents, parents, or your own collection of old images. If you do not have one, I can supply one for you. There's even some other ones that you might find online that you can use as well. You don't have to have one that you scan. It is a nice kind of experience to learn how to scan an image. It looks like my scanner is not working right. So it is kind of good experience just to learn how to use a scanner. So I'm going to do a demonstration if we get enough time and just kind of go through that new project. You got enough time to do everything. I just wanted to put it up. Oh, great. I don't know if it's going to work because I got my little scan thing. Let me see. It's showing a little red blinking light, which is never a good. It's not. Let's see. Well, we'll have to cross this bridge when we get there, I guess. Doesn't seem to be showing up. We'll see if we can make that do. I'm going to have to come around one of the other computers that have a scanner, like maybe the second computer here, and kind of just go around. Let me see if I'm just going to see while I do this if I can maybe find this scanner. Not a good sign. Anyways, did anyone try to do lesson 2 to see if we have the restorative generative AI capabilities? Did anyone try to do that last class? No. Okay, so we'll just see if you can. I'll go over both ways again. It doesn't look like my scanner is working. We'll cross that bridge when we get there. Okay, so basic photo corrections. We talked last class about image resolution and size. That's at the very beginning of the chapter. There is some one or two questions in. Let's see. Somehow this closed out. In the quiz that comes from the very first part of this chapter, which talks about understanding resolution and image size. It's an important thing to read and understand. This is one of our student learning outcomes, to understand image resolution and size and when to use the correct number. So I definitely recommend reading through that and somewhat understanding it. If you need any kind of help with that, it does get a little confusing, but you just have to recognize that resolution is a measurement of pixels. So depending on how you are going to use your image, whether it's going to be in print or it's going to be in screen, they have to have certain sizes of resolution and size. So this example really deals with correcting an image. So at the beginning of every chapter, you have what your final piece should look like. Before you hand it in, go back to the beginning of the chapter and just make sure it looks something like this. Few people who handed like lesson 3, if they would have just gone back to the beginning of the chapter, you would have seen that yours looked nothing like that. So it's always a good idea to go back and do that.
When you say like that, meaning without the third individual, the fourth individual?
Right, this one right here.
Yeah.
This is what it starts like, and this is what it should look like, more or less. I'm not that picky on it. Like for example, if you forgot to crop and you left the whole piece uncropped, that I'm picky on. If you forgot to put the little screws in the corners, that I'm picky on. If you put everything on its own individual layers, I didn't take any points off for that because that's kind of how we did it in the example for creating a composite image. So it should just look something like this. So this example talks about restoring an image. So the first thing that we're going to do, and a lot of the things that we're going to do right now are going to be an exact replication into the project that I'm going to introduce. So kind of know that there'll be some crossovers. So with this, when we look at it, we determined that this image needs some tonal value work, that there is some yellow kind of tone in here. There's some also things that we have to repair and restore. We want to get rid of this kid. We want to crop it to the right size, and we also want to straighten that image. So that's basically what we're going to do. At the end, we're also going to apply a sharpen filter. What sharpen will do is it will make the edges of anything in here a little bit more, so it just kind of raises the contrast. So it looks like your image is a little bit sharper. Sometimes if you over sharpen an image, it starts to look too fake, that it just has too much contrast and things. So it's one of those things that I can never say, just apply this number and sharpen. It's really an optical kind of filter that you have to do by eyes. Now, a lot of the filters in Photoshop have an auto button. So do a lot of the adjustments. Now, I'm going to start to expect to see some of these adjustments, whether it's a level adjustment, brightness and contrast adjustment. And if you're in doubt, choose auto. It's the easiest way to do it. It's kind of like setting your camera on auto instead of manually fixing these. So within the book, the first thing they had us do is we're going to crop this to the correct size, and we're going to straighten it. So we've used the crop tool. This is our second application. The first application was in lesson 3. And the crop tool physically changes the dimensions of your image. Now, if you were to go up to image size, you can't change the width and the height independently of this image and image size because you'll notice they are linked together. But through your cropping, you can. You're physically changing the dimension. So if I wanted to say, make this 8.5 by 11, so in the width, if I go 8.5, there's no way I can change the height without changing the proportion, so it looks like a fun house thing where it's stretched too much this way or the other way. So you always want to keep the proportion in your image size. You never want to take this off, because if you start messing with a proportion, it's going to look weird, right? It's going to either look too tall and skinny or too wide and fat. So the only way that you can change the physical size of your canvas is by cropping. You could also change it, which we're not going to get into, by going into the canvas size. So image canvas size. Now when we look in canvas size, this is not quite as specific as you could do with the crop tool. So if I wanted to crop this canvas, like say to 8 by 9 or 6 by 5, I can do that. But it's saying, where do you want this to be cropped? So if you take it off the center, it's going to crop it evenly around. If you move it to this side, it's going to crop it off of this. But this can be a little confusing. So unless you're really versed at how to use this image canvas size, my suggestion would be to always use the crop tool if you have to change the size of your image. So the crop tool is our third tool down, and remember that all of our options that we can use in this tool, and any tool, are in the options bar. The options that you use for every one of these tools will always be saved from the previous time that you did it. Now, in lesson 3, we used ratio. Ratio lets you crop at any size freehand that you want. So you could just crop it at any size, length, and width. In this example, we're going to, because someone is telling us that we want to crop this image to 7 inches by 7 inches at 200 ppi, we put those numbers into our, was it 200 or 300? Maybe it's 300. It is 300, my bad. We put those numbers into our image of width, height, resolution, right? So that is the easiest way to get the most specific number and resolution and to crop it to exactly where you want it. If you were to go to image canvas size, it's not quite as specific as this. Now, if you look at some of the ones underneath that, some of them will just give you a 1-to-1 square. So you could go everywhere from 9 all the way down to 1 inch. But whenever you go lower or higher, it's just going to be in a 1-to-1 square. So again, it's not as specific as giving it the width, height, resolution. So there's all of these presets. Now, if you have Photoshop subscription, you could create a lot of your own presets. If you have something like mine, I have a newsletter that I produce that every month there's new members at the club that I do, and there's one crop size that I always crop everything that introduces all the new members. And I have that as a preset, so I don't always have to go in and do that. So the width, height, resolution. Now, before I do that, we want to straighten this. Now, your phone, you might have experienced this if you took a picture and the horizon is a little off, where you can straighten it on your phone under the edit. Within your crop tool, in your options bar, there's the little straighten. It looks like a ruler. And what you do is you just click, hold, and drag along whatever line is not straight. You're not going to go on a straight line, but you're going to follow the line that needs to be straightened. Everything on the outside now of this shield is going to be deleted. We've got this delete cropped pixels checked. If you don't check that, the pixels are still going to remain off of your canvas. I don't like to keep those pixels because if I'm moving this to a composite, I don't want all of those pixels to come along with it, right? So if I were to take this image and now bring it into another composite image, and if I don't crop those pixels off, those pixels are going to go along into that other file, right? So if I'm making, if I'm not going into InDesign, where I have the box, and I'm making a Photoshop file of, 7 by 7, like, let's say 4, 2, 4, 6 of them. And if I were to take that file over here of this 7 by 7 and bring it over here, it's going to take all of those pixels that are on the outside of this with it. And I don't want that. I want just the crop. So when I bring the crop, it's going to fit. Now, what I'm going to show you as a demo for the restorative project that we're going to do, I'm going to ask you to, and I provide a template to create a before and after template, right? So we have the before, your original scan, and then you're going to put it next to your retouched photo. And this is what you're going to do. You're going to bring one over. So if you don't have this delete crop pixels, it's going to bring that whole size, and you're going to have to figure out what goes into the template part. So my suggestion is, before you do any cropping, make sure this delete cropped pixels is checked in your options bar. So now that we've got it at 7 by 7 at 300, we're going to move these little handlebars on the side in order to crop it to 7 by 7. So you just kind of have to play around with it, and the objective is to not get any of the white part of those kind of borders like from the old retro kind of photographs. You can lose a little bit, but try to get it as much close to possible without taking away too much. If you find that you didn't take enough away, go back and crop it again. So in order to make that commitment to the crop, you just have to hit the check mark. So if you get like a little, you can see I've got like a little white sliver here at the top. I don't know if you can see that. Let me just zoom up on it. Not too bad, not too bad. I really wouldn't worry about that too much. But if you come to this side, no, it's actually, I got it pretty close. So I'm not going to worry about recropping it. So that's cropping it to 7 by 7. Now I'm just going to bring the bottom of this up a little so you can see at the bottom of my window. If you want to know the size, if it cropped correctly, there is this document size. And it tells me 7 by 7 at 300 PPI. So that's a quick way without having to go to image size to check. This is a menu where you can choose whichever one you want. Document size, profile. I usually just keep it at document dimensions because those are things that I always want to know. Is it the right file size and document dimension? Any questions on how I got that? Because you're going to have to be doing this for the project as well. We're going to be cropping it to a 5.5 by 5.5 at 200 PPI. Everyone see how we did that? All right, my scanner hasn't come back on yet. So the next thing that we want to do is we want to color correct this. We want to change the tonal value. So a lot of times with photos like this that are black and white, or even color like this, as they age, sometimes they'll go, because it was done in like chroma color, it'll be either like a magenta color, a cyan color, and sometimes like this yellowish color. Like this is kind of a yellowish color. So we have to color correct those. With this, it has that yellowish kind of color. The one easy way that we can do this, and I like to have my properties menu up, I just kind of docked it along with my layers, is to use our image adjustment for these. Now, image adjustments, you gotta be careful a little bit with them, that you're always selected on the layer that you want that image adjustment to take place. Now, the one cool thing with layer adjustments, these are called layer adjustments because they apply to a layer and they're non-destructive. So if you get your adjustments from this window that comes from the window, you can see that the adjustments are checked. It'll create its own separate layer. Sometimes if I'm doing something really fast and got to get it out, and I know I'm not going to come back to it, I'm just putting something up on a website really fast, for an email or something, I won't do a layer adjustment. What I'll do instead is an image adjustment. They're the exact same thing. If you look at them, here we have levels. There's levels, brightness and contrast, curves, exposure, vibrance, hue and saturation. They're all of the exact same adjustments, except these are permanent. They don't give you that layer. They don't add to the size of your file. So if you know that you're never going to go back and adjust that again, sometimes I'll just, not to have to flatten the file and to make it easier, I'll just go to an image adjustment, do that levels adjustment, and not worry about having to have that level adjustment here that maybe a printer or a web designer by mistake can click off that little eyeball, which it happens. If they're messing with a file, those kind of things happen where they inadvertently hit the little view button of that layer and that adjustment goes away. So sometimes if I'm doing something fast, I know I'm not going to come back and I'm going to be happy with that adjustment, I come up to image adjustments and apply that adjustment, right? So let's just see what happens between the two. So if I were to go to curves, and with this curves, I am going to choose the white point. So the white point measurement is going to determine what is naturally white in your image. And from there, it's going to adjust all of the colors. So I'm just going to choose the white point, and I'm just going to take these adjustments to the side. And we said that there's this little spot on the girl's dress that is kind of white. You can see the histogram changes for the curves and adjusts that. Now, if I were to click OK, notice there is no layer adjustment that comes onto here. Once I save this, it's done. I can't go back. If I'm going to do a Command Z, now let's try the image adjustment, the layer adjustment. And I come to curves, and I'm going to do the exact same thing. Now, with this, the layer adjustments come through the properties. It doesn't bring up its own histogram. That's why I like to have my properties panel open, because any of those adjustments or other things through panels will come through my properties panel. So this is where I choose the white point tool, bring this over to the side, and click on her dress again. And now notice that it is in my layers panel as a layer adjustment. Now, if you're going to apply multiple adjustments, you have to always come back to the layer that you want. If you're going to be on curves and then you're going to apply another adjustment, it's not going to give you the correct output. Now, sometimes if you notice, if you have multiple layers in your file and you're doing adjustments, you might have to adjust it. So there's this little kind of icon at the bottom. And if I just hover over this icon, let me make this a little smaller so you in the back, and it will adjust the layers. It kind of clips just to that layer, right? So if you have something that's on a transparent layer, say like a picture of an apple, and you're trying to adjust the color, or adjust whatever, you just want it to adjust for that apple and no other layers below it, you want to click this little clipping path kind of thing to just do the image adjustment for that one layer. So if you find that you do an adjustment and it doesn't really do it, come back within your properties panel and adjust that. But if I'm going to do, let's say a curve, or not a curves, a level adjustment. Level adjustment will adjust shadows, the darks, midtones, everything in between, and the highlights, the whites. So how I judge a good image of whether it needs to be adjusted is there a good proportion of shadows, midtones, and highlights? Is there some nice bright whites? Or is everything kind of gray? Is there some nice, rich, deep color? Or is everything kind of gray? So that's how I kind of adjust it. So if I'm going to come to levels, again, my properties panel is going to bring up my level adjustment. Now with this, if you're not sure, click the auto button. The auto button is your friend if you're not sure on how to do it. But when you look at the histogram, which is this here, shadows, the darks, midtones, in-betweens, highlights are the bright whites, right? So a good way to just kind of look at this and assess it without doing anything, is there anything at this bright white end of the histogram? No, it's empty. We got this big old, like, you could shoot a cannon right through here and it goes straight up through. So that is something that I would first look at. So if I'm gonna adjust this just optically, I might just at least optically bring it right until where there is something on this graph, right? Now let's just see what auto does. So if I hit auto, it even brought it a little bit more. Now in my opinion, it kind of blows it out a little bit. It like gives you a little bit too much brightness and it kind of can blow some of the details out. But the nice thing with these are they're non-destructive. So you can always go back and adjust it. So it's nothing that's going to destruct. And if you don't want it, you could just turn it off. With the other image adjustment, you cannot do that. Once you make it and save that file and put it away and open it up again, it's done. You'd have to go back to the original. So all layer adjustments are like that. They're non-destructive. So if I want to come back up to the levels again and say, well, I want to just bring this down a little bit, I can adjust that levels adjustment. If my art director, my creative director says, hey, that's way too bright or that's way too dark, go back and adjust it more. I can do that. If I were to do one of those image adjustments, I couldn't if it was just a regular image adjustment. Any questions on layer adjustments? Because now I'm going to start to expect to see some of these in your files. So if you think that your color is off on your image or it's too dark, too bright, there's not enough contrast, the color is off. Like some of the other ones are like, let's say we want to balance the color even a little bit more. So the color balance one, if anyone has ever taken an art class, you have your color wheel of complementary colors. So if there's a little bit too much red, if your image is a little bit too much on the red or warm side, you adjust that by cooling it, by bringing in some cyan. If there's a little bit too much green, you adjust it by adding some magenta. So each of these will adjust it. Now notice you can do these for each of your shadows, midtones, and highlights. So if you see like the whites have like a little bit too much red in it, you're going to add a little bit of cyan to it, right? So you kind of have to look at it and say, what color is off on this or what needs to be a little bit adjusted? If you've ever taken an art class and learned the color wheel, it's the same thing. These are the complementary colors that are right across. So like the opposite of yellow is blue. The opposite of red is green. So magenta is kind of like a red is green. And same way the opposite of red is kind of the cyan. So these are almost alike, but they're just kind of flipped, right? So that's how you can adjust. So if I look at this and say, well, this is still just a little bit too yellow, maybe I'm just going to adjust this and take down some of the yellow by adding a little bit of blue. Okay, so that's how you can start to adjust these. The nice thing about them, if you don't like it, you could just turn it off. So those are image adjustments. Now, the next thing that we did, any questions on those image adjustments, layer adjustments? What they do and how to use them. Remember, your adjustments panel, along with all your panels, are found under your window pull-down menu. So from here, the next thing that we do is we want to start to retouch this. So if we look, it's kind of hard to see from there, but you can kind of see it here. There is a kind of crease. And if I zoom up on it here a little bit, you kind of can see this crease. We also kind of see all these like kind of dust and scratches. The book tells us that we can use the remove tool, which is a brand new tool to Photoshop. It's part of the AI generative tools. So if you choose, that's what I was asking, I know on mine because they give me the instructor, the AI version of this. I don't know if they've updated these yet. I can come out and kind of check. But the tool for that you can use is the spot healing. The remove tool, notice it looks just like the spot healing, except instead of having this little arc with marching ants, it's got like those little kind of elongated diamond shapes, which tells you that it's an AI regenerative tool, right? So let's use both. Now again, if I want something to happen, notice with my my cursor, it's showing me this like circle with the line through it. That's because I'm not on the correct layer. So I'm going to just jump down to my background layer. Now, the spot healing brush, you do not need a source. It's just a click, hold, and drag type of tool. So I'm going to just click, hold, and drag. You want to kind of use the brush that's accordingly fit for what kind of restoration you're doing. So in this case, I'm not going to use a brush that's this big, you know, because that's just too big. You might get some funky results from that. So you have to size your brush accordingly. If it's just a little blemish on a face, use a small brush. If it's a hair that's going across someone's face or someone's glasses, use a very fine brush to do that. If it's something that's very large, then use the large brush. So with this, all we're going to do is click, hold, and drag. Let's see, here we go.
Hold, what do you hold?
You're holding down the mouse.
Okay, right.
So click your mouse, keep it pressed in, and drag. So click, hold, and drag. Now I'm just going to do a couple Command Z's to undo. It is the exact same thing if you use the remove tool. So with the remove tool, instead of, you know you're using that, instead of the gray, it just becomes pink. Now it takes a little bit longer to do. It comes up with this like little dialog box. It's not quite as fast because it's using some of the AI tools. Doesn't look like it fixed it quite as well. Let's see if I've got generative AI on. Find distraction. Let me just see if there's, I think that's everything that I had in there. It doesn't look to me like it works so well. Remove after each stroke. I've got that on. 25. But for some reason, it didn't work. Last class it did. Let's see if I try this again. So if one, I guess the moral of the story, if one doesn't work, go to the next one. Kind of worked a little bit there. I'm going to bring this down to fit into window. Bring this up a little bit. I just want to check the size. It's at 80. I have this on. Find distractions. That's right. Generative AI on. I'm just going to go back to the regular spot healing brush because it doesn't take quite as long. Click, hold, and drag down. Okay, so it takes that away. Now, the other thing that it does is once you zoom in, that's why we really learn the zoom tool, is we see all of these little imperfections. So if we go back, it's just a click. You can click and drag or just click, click. This also is where the space bar to have your hand tool come in. So you don't have to keep zooming in and out. So with this space bar, I'm just holding down that space bar and moving my image around so I can see. Now that's on my screen. And there's a few other ones here. This is what a photo retoucher will do. All day long, they just take out all these imperfections in an image. So this one, we're just gonna click, hold, and drag over it. So this will work on everyone's. If you don't have the generative AI, this will work on yours using that spot healing brush. The next thing that we want to do is get rid of this kid that is on the bridge here as we're on the Ponte Vecchio here in Florence. So I'll show you both ways in case you have the AI version of it. Patch tool is the one tool that's not an AI tool. It's kind of more of the manual type of tool. The remove or just generative AI is the tool that we can use. So if I bring up this, whoa, kind of went up a little more. Wow, this context menu. So if you wonder where I'm getting that, if we go to window and at the bottom, the contextual taskbar, that's the contextual taskbar, right? So it's kind of just like a floating little menu where it changes for different things that you're trying to do. So that is our generative AI one. So we can choose to select this kid. And again, I am going to zoom up on this. For me, I like zooming up on things. Just, I work kind of big. So I'm just going to use my lasso tool. The lasso tool is kind of like the most freehand one. And I want to just kind of select around him. I'm not going to go so close to him. Got a little close there. And I want to make sure I get his shadow. And come to the end, and there he is there. Now with my contextual taskbar, I'm just going to hit generative fill, right? And let's see, it brings us up at the bottom. For some reason it keeps going down to the bottom. Hey, hi Raymond. And now we're just going to hit generate. So if this works on you, on yours, that's fine, it's good. It's kind of a good thing to know how this works. If it doesn't, I'll show you the second way that you can do it. So it takes a little bit longer, and now we can see that he's gone. So AI has figured out what that background should look like. Look how nice, like everything kind of meets and melts. There's no like weird funky stuff going on here. So that, if it works on yours, do it like that. If it doesn't, I'm going to do a Command Z. Now, Command Z, it brings this back up. So now I'm going to use the patch tool. The patch tool is a tool you have to give it a source. We've given it a source by selecting it. It is underneath those same healing tools, and it's about halfway down. Now, this one you're not going to get as good of a result, but if push comes to shove, it'll work. So with this patch tool, I'm just going to kind of click, hold, and drag until he kind of disappears. And then I can release. So now if I delete that, you can see it's not so bad, for not having generative AI, but I have to do a few more healing things after this. The one healing thing that I would do for sure is we can see some duplication of these kind of markings on the bridge. Right? So I want to make sure I get rid of these, and that's when I talked about the clone stamp tool. The clone stamp tool takes pixels from one area and copies them to another area. You definitely need a source for the clone stamp tool. Another detail that you want with the clone stamp tool is to check aligned. If you don't check aligned, it's always going to go back to the original source, just to that original source. If you checked a line, every time you click, it's going to follow where you click, and I'll show you the difference. So with this, we want to, it's a brush, so we want to come a little bit larger, and we want to say, where do we want to get the pixels from to copy from one area to the next? So if I want to kind of copy over this, I'm not going to select pixels from over here. So where you're going to make that selection is somewhere by what you're trying to heal. You want to kind of have it within the same area. So I'm going to option. Is once I put my option key down, notice it changes from a brush to a bullseye with the clone stamp tool. So that's telling it where I am going to get my source. That's like the rubber stamp, the ink part of the rubber stamp. So when I click, it's putting my clone stamp down on the ink. I've clicked it and now I release. Now notice when I start to come over, I can click. So if you look at this little white crossbar, the more I keep moving, that white crossbar moves along with me, right? So if I move over to here, notice that right crossbar is relative to where my brush is. If I were to take this aligned off at the top here, I'm going to take the alignment off. Notice what happens now. So if I come here and let's say I want to click here, option click, and I'm going to come over here, click, click. Now let's say I'm even going to come here, click. It's still going to my original source. It's not following along with me. So if you want all of your stuff to come from one source, take the aligned off. If you want it to kind of follow along with you to take the source of ink as you go, keep it on. So as we do this, a lot of times you have to just keep resourcing where it is. Maybe I don't want this crease here at all, so I'm going to click here and click, click, click. Now if I want something else like from below here to kind of make that line look more real, I'm just doing the same thing on top of it. Now I did it kind of fast just for the sake of it, but when I'm using this tool, I'm really careful on where I'm clicking, the size of my brush, and it's much slower than this. You could also, if you wanted to, let's just say I'm going to click here, I'm going to turn the align back on. Instead of just click, click, click one at a time, you can also do like a drag. Like I'm not releasing my mouse and dragging it on there. So if I want, let's say, we'll just do it for the sake of copying it, I just clicked it there, and if I want this to drag on here, you can see that we're kind of getting the same result, but I'm just doing it for the sake of example. So that's the clone stamp tool. It copies pixels from one area to the next. It's considered one of the healing tools. Those are the ones that I really want to talk about today as far as the healing tools that we're going to use. Now there's some other healing on this that we could do. Like if we want to fix this little area here, I could probably use the clone stamp tool, make this a little bit smaller, and I'm going to option click here and maybe just drag this down here so it doesn't look like there is this really wide gap in this part of the image here. Now again, we're looking at this, at 100%, but if we do fit to window, we bring it back, it's not quite as noticeable. So that's a way to get somebody out of the picture that you had. Any questions so far? Okay, the last thing that we're going to do is to sharpen this image, right? Is to add a sharpen filter. Now, the book says to flatten it. Go ahead and flatten it. This way you won't get any confusion on which layer you're sharpening. We're going to come up to the Layers Panels option menu, and here is the flatten image. I'll be able to tell if you've done all of the restorations on it just by the way it looks, and you're just going to click OK. So the one that we're going to choose for this is the Smart Sharpen. Anytime you see the word smart in front of a filter, that means that Photoshop is kind of doing some of its own work. So when in doubt, again, just like you would choose auto, choose Smart Sharpen. So if we come up to filter, there are a bunch of sharpen ones. So just sharpen is like a general sharpen. Sharpen edge will make things look much more in focus. sharpen more. So if you do a smart sharpen, you can come back and do sharpen more, and the sharpen more will use the same numbers and things that you use and just do it again. And just add a little bit more, sharpen a little bit more. Smart sharpen or unsharpen mask. So we're going to do the smart sharpen. Okay, so Photoshop will kind of give you a little bit of its kind of learning capabilities. Now, there are just a few things that you want to look at. Now, I like looking here I'm going to come up a little bit more. We'll come to the boy's shirt here because you can kind of tell. So right now when we click inside of it, if you click on it, it's kind of hard to tell from here, but you'll see it when you're at yours. This gives you the preview. So if you click on the preview, it just toggles back and forth to the sharpen and not sharpen. Now, the amount you'll kind of see is the more amount of sharpen, the more distinct the edges are coming. But sometimes with that sharpen comes some other things that you don't want. Like you might get a little bit more of these kind of noise little speckles. So my advice would don't go that large on your sharpen because you'll get a weird outcome. So with this, let's just do it at 100% for a sharpen. Now, the radius is going to tell you how far around this percentage that you want to use. So the book actually tells you, exactly what it does. And the typical radius for this is you never really want to go over 1. So just let that be a rule of thumb of not to go over 1. If you're going to go up to anything, maybe 1.1, 1.2 on a lot of the filters that you choose. So we'll keep it at 1. But if you want to see what what this does, and you can kind of see it here, what that really heavy radius does is it makes all the edges almost look like it's kind of like cutout edges. So, you can see what happens on these from like 64%, but we don't want anything to be that distinct, right? So we just want the edges to be a little bit sharper. And the reduce noise, let's see what they have. Again, these I can never tell you the exact one to use, but reduce noise is just kind of see what happens. And I like to zoom up on things when I do that. So I'll look at like this kid in here and see what the reduce noise will do. So it just kind of blends some of that out. I'm trying to see if the book gives us a number for reduce noise. I don't think they do. We're just going to keep it at a low number and go like maybe 20. None of these I go really high on. I kind of keep everything on the conservative side. Because this filter, we can't go back. Now we're going to learn a little bit later in the semester that if this was a smart object, we can apply a smart filter and then we can go back and change the filters. This is not a smart object. You can convert this into a smart object and be able to do that. But once you save this, if you were to save it, that filter is on it forever. That's why it's always a good idea to have your original image that you began with. So that just adds to our sharpen. Now, another thing that I like to do is if we bring our history panel up, and you just kind of want to see, so if we go from one to the other, let's just zoom up a little bit here so you can really see in the back. We're going to go from smart sharpen to not. So it's a very subtle kind of sharpen, and you'll see it more because this isn't a high resolution output, but you'll see a little bit. But if you want to add more to it, only do it after you do this kind of like before and after. And that ends this example, this exercise for lesson 2.
Where'd you hit history again?
History is under window.
Yeah.
So it's under window, and this gives you all of the steps. So if I were to go all the way back to the top and start with where I opened it, it can go right back to the original. And you can see all of the steps that you took to get to where we were at, all the way down to the bottom. So before you save something, you can always go back. But if I were to come back here and start something else, then it would take it from that point down. So your history just shows you all of the steps that you've taken that far. Yeah.
Is there going to be
Yes, which it's up on Canvas, so that's a good question. Let's go and look on Canvas right now. So we've got, for our assignments that are up, no, I have to make it, that's a good question. I haven't put it up yet. I'll put that up right today. There's gonna be lesson 2. I'm gonna give you plenty of time, but we have book exercise lesson 3 that's due by the end of day today. You have until the 29th to hand it in. Quiz for lesson 3, due by the end of day Wednesday. You have until the 29th to put it in. Our composite from an image, due the 29th, you have until October 6th. This is the one that I'm gonna go over now, retouching an old image. It's not due till October 8th, and you have until October 15th. The lesson 2 will come, it doesn't take that long, you'll have until like middle of next week, probably next month, next Wednesday to do it. I'll make that live today, right after lecture here. Any questions on lesson 2? All right, I'm going to show you something really quick. There's not a lot of people here, but I will go through the retouching project very quickly too. I'm not going to do a demo on it until, because my scanner isn't working until Wednesday. But here is an image that will be something like you may find, right? Something that you may find at home that we are going to restore this image to. So I just want to make you aware of some of the filters that we have that are called neural filters. Now, I tried to do this with Lauda last week and they weren't quite working. I looked today and mine were working. So I don't know, I hope that they're working on the screens out there. So if we look at this, we can tell just by looking at it that there needs to be some restoration here. There's a little bit of a scratch going across the top. So what I want to do is go into neural filters, which is the most recent set of filters that Photoshop has added to the application. So they're right at the top, neural filters. Kind of a hard word to say. I have a hard time saying that word. It brings you into a different, totally different dialog box. Now, if we look at the bottom down here, we can, it's kind of hard to see, but just bring it up so you can see where it is. At the bottom there is this little kind of screen here. Now we haven't done anything yet, but this will give you a side-by-side before and after kind of restoration of what you're looking at. So if we look at these, on the side here are all the filters that you have. Now because these filters take a lot of memory, they ask you to download these filters. So if we look at them, if you see this little kind of cloud with an arrow, you have to download it or you have to turn them on. So let's just say the first one might be skin smoothing. So we'd have to do that and you'll see that it downloads it. So now if we put this side by side, it should. Okay, let's try. I don't know why it's not doing that. Let's try if we go. Now it should, typically, it shows the side by side. I don't know why it is not doing that. Let's see, maybe if we'll apply something else. So with this, you can, make it a little more blurry, and this is what it's showing the face on. So you're turning it on. So another one that I like to do is, how about if we remove, let's see, photo enhance. I just want to see the ones that they use. I don't really follow the book so much on this one. Photo enhancement is less to 15. Let's see which one they use. Is there a photo? Oh, photo restoration. Here it is down at the bottom. Maybe this is the one that'll bring side by side. I know when I do it, mine comes on automatically. They might have changed something from when I did it. But if you do this little side by side here, you can see where this is the original. I don't know why they changed this. I used to put them up each side, one next to the other. So there is the revise. So you can see there is the revise, there is the original. So you can see some of the skin smoothing. JPEG artifact removal. And you'll see that sometimes it'll take a little time at the bottom. This is all AI. So you're not really using any tools to cover over anything. You might have to do some things and bring it back into Photoshop. Let's see, Smart Portrait is one that I use. Again, you should see the little amount come in. And you can always go back. I'm kind of bummed that it doesn't have the side-by-side feature like it used to. And on the right-hand side are things that you can change. So let's say we want to change the happiness of this. Let's see if this gives us any kind of different output. Sometimes it'll change the eyebrows, the face, the smile. You can change the expressions. It's just kind of a fun thing. You know, you could play with any of these. Another one that I like is if you want to colorize this image. One of them, now it doesn't always work, might give you some funky results, but for the most part, it's like 90% accurate. So you can see as you colorize that, there's some weird things that's happening down here. So you might have to go back into Photoshop and fix it, right? So I'll show you how to do that right now. So there's just some of the neural filters that have done some of the overall ones. Now, let's see how if they changed. Scratch reduction. So I want to see where they did the scratch reduction, where they found that. Photo restoration filter. I thought we did that one. Okay, so here's the photo restoration filter. Okay, there's the scratch reduction. So let's see if we can get rid of that scratch reduction and see if we bring it to like about 50. Let's see if that'll get rid of our scratch.
So AI recognizes where the scratch is?
Yeah.
And does it?
Yeah.
So you don't have to
Yep.
use a brush or anything?
Right, so there it goes away. So this is more the automated one. Now, I was like showing you both because sometimes this doesn't give you what you expect, but you could use them both hand in hand. So now if I look at this, her dress looks a little weird. It's kind of brown on this side and blue on this side. I'm going to show you how I would correct that. But for the most part, if we go like to the back and forth, if we look at the difference between the two, you know, it's really pretty amazing. Now, I did these like really so you could see the difference. But if you go to each one of these, so maybe with the blur and skin smoothing, I bring this down just a little bit and bring maybe the smoothness down a little bit. And it does take some time as you go along and do them. If I were just to keep it on this and say, okay, now let me see if I could raise this to the bottom so you can see. Now on the output, you can choose current layer, new layer. I always choose a new layer. So I could always go back and not do that. You can also have a layer mask. We haven't learned layer masks yet, so that might be kind of confusing. So I'm going to choose new layer, and oops, and it looks like it's still kind of thinking. It is. It's still processing because I don't see the OK here yet. All right, so I'm going to wait till my little OK turns on. Hopefully I didn't give it too much to think about. All right, now my OK is blue, right? So I say OK. And it's taking a second. Now this is all AI, so it takes some like generating power. If you don't have a powerful computer, this is where your computer might crash. So if you try this on a computer at home, I wouldn't have a ton of files open at the same time. So here it is right here. We came out of it, and here is that layer. Now, if I want to try to make this look like she's wearing all of the same colored dress, I'm going to do exactly what we did in lesson 1, right? So let me just bring this up to the top so, oops, all of you, Command Z, all of you in the back can see. I want to come down a little bit more. Oh, yeah. Kind of messed that up. All right, let me just make this a little bit bigger. So in lesson 1, we talked about blending modes. So blending modes will allow you to adjust any of the pixels and colors below the layer that you're working on. Now I'm going to shut off this background layer because I don't need that on anymore. So above this layer 1, I'm just going to call it Restore, right? And I am going to add a new layer on top of it. Now when it comes to the project that I'm going to give you to restore an image, you don't have to use any of the manual tools. If these neural filters work for you, that's all you need to do. So it's not that like trying of an exercise. So what I'm going to do is make sure that I'm on the restore layer, and I'm just going to select her top, right? So from the selection tools we know how to use, what tool might we want to use to select her dress? Maybe the object selection, but it might grab all of her. Similar one, we might want to try the quick selection tool, because what kind of selection does the quick selection tool make? Edge. It looks for an edge, right? So the quick selection is a brush. So let's just see what happens. And remember, the quick selection, you don't have to hold down your shift key. So as I do this, it's finding the edge. So there it did it pretty well, right? It found that edge pretty well. So I just have her dress selected. Now I have to choose the color that I want. So if you want this kind of gray, I kind of like the bluish kind of color. So I'm going to click on my foreground color swatch, and it's going to bring up my color picker. For my color picker, I'm just going to move this to the side, and I'm going to choose this color that's inside of the button there, that kind of deep, kind of plum kind of color. Now I'm going to come up to my layer 1, and let me just name it dress color, just so I know what's going on. What blending mode am I going to choose for this layer? What did we do in lesson 1 with that orange and the blue? What was the blending mode? Does anyone remember? It's called color, right? So the blending mode is right, I'll choose it, but I'll deselect it. This is the blending mode for that layer. So color is the blending mode if you have a black and white image and you want to colorize like a very specific part. So if you have a picture of a black and white, say a little girl with a flower or a pink bow in her hair, and you just want to color the pink bow in her hair, or just the flower that she's holding on to, or the lips, this is the blending mode you're going to use, color. I've got the color selected that I'm going to use. Now I'm going to choose my brush tool, right? So with the brush, I have to select the proper brush that I'm going to use. I still have the last brush I used from lesson 1. Remember that spatter brush? It's always going to stay on the brush that you use last, or the tool that you use last. So I'm just going to choose a regular, round, soft brush. A soft brush means that the edges are soft. A hard brush means that the edges are hard. These other brushes, as you move, will kind of give you like kind of a calligraphy type of thing. So really soft and different pressures. So remember that all of our options for our brush are in the options bar. If I want to lightly, say I'm going to be doing this in lesson 4. If I was going to retouch and put makeup on her, I wouldn't want to use a brush with like 100% coming out. If I just wanted her lips to look, or her cheeks to look blushy, I would choose a brush that only had like 5% of the paint coming out of that brush, because I wouldn't want it to look like clown makeup, just very light brush. So with this, I might take my flow, just to begin with, down a little bit. Now it doesn't matter how big my brush is because I have this selected. So now I'm just going to brush inside of this and change all of the color. Now it's using all of the shadows and highlights below it. This is what that color blending mode does. If I bring it to fit in window here, let me make this a little bit larger, move this to the side. You can see how we were able to adjust that color layer that had automatically done that. So if I'm going to deselect it and look at it, that's a pretty good restoration just for a couple like click, 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 click type of things. So if you're doing a project of like, say, trying to restore some of your family old photographs, I just recently did this for my uncle and he was like astonished where I took some of my grandparents' really old like pictures from like the turn of the the 1900s and colorized them, and it was pretty amazing some of the results that we got. So from going from this, now what I would do is I'm going to take this and this, holding down my shift key, because remember, shift adds to your selection. I have both of these there. Now I could take this one and I can merge those two layers together that I have selected. And now I don't have to worry about that dress color being on its own. Now I could keep that dress on its own if I wanted to, but now if I look at one and look at the other, you can really see how that image was really restored. Now I went a little heavy on some of them just so you could see from where you are. I might not go that heavy on the face, but notice how I changed that one that changed the facial expression to a little bit happier. So if someone has like kind of a little frowny and you want to make them a little happier, that's how you can do it. So this is one of the tools that you can use also in the photo restoration project. I'm not going to really go over it, but just kind of give it a look over. So you're going to be doing the same thing, exact same thing, except you're going to be choosing an image. Now, at the end, once you go through all of this, it's just like what we just did. Take this image. Just know that the size that you're going to use is a 5x5 at 200 ppi. All of this is up. And at the very end, there is a before and after template. So for this project, you're going to be handing in two files. You're going to be handing in a before and after template that I already give to you, and it's 14 by 8.5, and it looks like this. So there's the before. You're going to put the before and the after picture. So you're going to bring them into this file, and they're going to go right over here. So your before is going to be your OG scan, or your OG untouched image. The after is going to be your retouch. Okay? This could be flat. I don't care if you save the layers with it. So that's the first file that you're going to hand in. The second file is going to be your 5.5 by 5.5 at 200, and this is going to be your retouched PSD file. So this is one where I'm going to ask you to hand in the Photoshop file itself. On Wednesday, I'm going to do a demonstration of this and show you how to do all of this. But just so you can kind of get some knowledge of what's coming down. Now, Laura has a case where she brought in her grandfather's picture that is not it won't cut to 5x5 without totally ruining the picture, without getting rid of some of it. If you have a picture like Laura's, like hers is very tall and wide, we'll make an exception. You do not have to crop it to this size. We'll crop it to a size that'll work for yours. So if you don't want, most images from these old pictures that we're looking at are square. Most of them are square. But with Laura's, let's see, I think I saved hers. I wonder if I still have it on there, where we already did her. Let's see, I think I saved it on Weems. Yes. So this was the one that Laura brought in of her grandfather. So there's no way we can crop this to 5x5. So if yours is like this and has a different ratio, we'll go with the ratio we'll have, and we'll just make an exception, and I'll show you how to recreate the before and after. So you're going to be handing in two files for this piece. Your restored one and a before and after PDF. Any questions on lesson 2? Because we'll put it to bed after today.
Yeah, the only question I have is, again, can you go, how you selected the dress?
Mm-hmm.
Which one?
For sure. So because I haven't saved this yet, I can come back up to my history panel. And let's see. Oops, layer visibility. Okay, it was right up to here. So I brought it up to here. So this was, let's see, did I lose my layers panel? It looks like I did. So if you shut one of your panels, oh, it's somewhere around here. It's just probably hidden somewhere. Let me try to shut it off and turn it on. Maybe it'll come up. Oh, it's attached to it. Okay. Oh, there it is at the bottom. Oops.
What do you hit deselect? Well.
What I did is I docked them together by mistake. So I created the separate layer.
Right.
I changed that to color blending mode, which remember, blending modes will always blend the pixels on the layer with all of the layers below it, right? So I did that. And then I took my quick selection tool. Let me just deselect again so I can show you how easy that was to select it. So I'm just going to zoom up a little bit, bring it kind of to the top. So quick selection selects by edge. So if you see something has an edge, even though there's like kind of shadowy around it, it's a good fast tool. Now, if it gets too much, then the second tool, if I were to go to my second tool, I would probably choose the polygon or the magnetic lasso tool. Probably the magnetic lasso because it would find all of the edges, but places up here, it might be that like kind of grayish kind of area where it would behoove me to make the clicks here. So I might switch back and forth, but my first tool I always come to is my quick selection tool. So the quick selection tool, I can let go of the mouse. I don't have to hold anything else down. And it's a pretty quick, I think that's why it's called quick selection, to get that selection in.
You just hit
You just keep clicking.
okay.
You know, click, click, click.
Yeah.
I'll show you again. I'll deselect. So it's just like this, I'm just clicking and dragging. That was just one click and a drag. I don't have any shifts key down. Then another click and a drag. And it does it pretty well, I have to say. And now from here, I just clicked in my foreground color, brought up my color picker, and once you're in your color picker, if you come into your layout, your tool turns into the eyedropper tool. So if you want to repeat a color, I chose this color within her dress, this like kind of plummy color, and then I come back to that dress color layer, and with my brush, I just start to color in. Now, because I've got that selection in, notice if I tried to brush over her face, nothing happens because I don't have it selected. The only thing that gets modified is inside of your selection, right? So I can bring this back to fit to window and deselect. So if I do a Command Z, let's say now I want to try to change the color of that dress. Maybe I want it to be something else. I could come back and do a Command Z, and let's say maybe if I want this dress to be like a shade, not that I ever would, but like just like kind of a shade of pink. Let's just see how that works. So it's still blending with those colors underneath it. So that pink along with that brownish on the bottom gives me that kind of, this is more of like a violet kind of color. So it's blending with the pixels that are below it. You're not getting that actual color itself because it's blending with the pixels of that brownish. So this color of light pink with that brown gives us that kind of more of a purpley kind of color for her dress. Did that answer your question? So from here, this is where I would save it and bring it in, but I'm going to do that next class, showing you how to transfer it over to the next one. So right now, I will make lesson 2 available. I'll give you plenty of time for both of these, so don't be stressed for time. Now, if there is ever a time where something comes up in your life, work, blah, 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 and you need an extension, just come and talk to me. I will always give you that extension. Like if, something came up in my family or I'm sick or whatever it is, I'd rather you not stress about the deadline and just focus on learning the objective of the exercise. Any questions? That gives you like about 2 hours in lab time. Get my attention I'll come over back to you, Raymond. If you want me to look at anything, Also ask your fellow students, if you're working on your composite image, hey, what do you think of this, you know? And I always think that's just as good as coming from me. All right, thank you for your attention. Have a good rest of your day. Remember to start looking for a photo if you haven't yet.